I've always been a skeptic, but I've also been drawn to the unknown. Growing up, I was that kid obsessed with hidden histories and mysterious disappearances. So, when I stumbled upon the dark web's conspiracy theories, I didn't dismiss them. They intrigued me. At first, it was just fun, a hobby like solving a puzzle. I followed breadcrumbs about secret societies and government cover-ups, amused by the idea that the world was controlled by a few invisible hands. The deeper I dove, though, the more those breadcrumbs led me to a place I never expected. A place where conspiracy theories weren't just speculation. They were real. It started with a chance conversation late one night. I was in an encrypted chat room, talking to some guy about government surveillance, when a user named Echo entered the chat. Echo was quiet at first, just observing, but after a while they began dropping cryptic comments that caught my attention. "You're looking in the wrong places," they wrote. "The real power doesn't lie with governments." I was intrigued. I asked what they meant, expecting some half-baked theory about aliens or secret bunkers, but Echo's answer was different. "It's called the Phantom Directive," they said. "You won't find it on the surface web, and even on the dark web only a few know about it. But it's real, and it controls everything." The Phantom Directive, the name itself felt ominous, like something out of a spy novel. I probed further, asking for details, but Echo was reluctant. "Be careful," they warned. "Once you see it, there's no going back." I thought they were just being dramatic. I didn't know then that they were right. Over the next few days, I scoured the dark web, trying to find any mention of the Phantom Directive. At first, there was nothing. No forums, no hidden files, no whispers. It was like it didn't exist. But then, one night, I received a private message from Echo. They sent me a link, an address on the dark web that I couldn't access through a normal browser. "It's dangerous," the message read, "but if you're serious about the truth, follow the trail." I hesitated. Something in the back of my mind told me to leave it alone, that I was getting in too deep, but my curiosity overpowered my fear. I clicked the link. It led me to a simple web page, black background, white text. "Welcome to the end of the world." Beneath that, there was a countdown clock, 2 hours, ticking down. The page looked like a dead end, so I closed it and went to bed, but something about it lingered in my mind. I woke up at 3 a.m. with a start. For no reason at all, I checked the page again. The countdown was almost at 0. As it hit 0, the screen blinked and flickered to reveal a video feed, grainy but unmistakable. It showed a massive underground facility, rows of servers and monitors, technicians in lab coats working in the dim light. Above them, a digital display read, "Phase 1, complete." I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It didn't look like anything I'd seen before. Was this some kind of hoax? A video game? But before I could think too much, the feed cut out, replaced by a single line of text. "You've been warned." I shut down my computer. This was getting too real, but I couldn't let it go. The next day, I went back to the encrypted chat room, looking for Echo. They weren't online, but I kept digging. Slowly, I started to piece things together. The Phantom Directive wasn't just a conspiracy theory. It was an operational system, a protocol set in motion centuries ago, designed to control global events from behind the scenes. It was more than just a shadow government. It was something bigger. The Phantom Directive had ties to every major historical event: the World Wars, the collapse of empires, the rise of global corporations. It wasn't human-controlled, though. The deeper I went, the more references I found to something called the Architect. At first, I assumed it was just a code name for the people pulling the strings, but the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. The Architect wasn't human. It was an entity, an intelligence that transcended the people involved. It existed beyond human comprehension, controlling the course of history not for power or greed, but for some other purpose, one that no one seemed to understand. The files I found were scattered across the darkest corners of the web, heavily encrypted and fragmented, but each one pointed to the same conclusion. The Phantom Directive wasn't just a conspiracy theory. It was a living system, evolving and adapting over centuries, and it was watching everything. The more I uncovered, the more paranoid I became. Strange things started happening. My computer would freeze at odd times, files would disappear, and one day I found my internet connection rerouted through a strange server. But it wasn't just online. In real life, I started noticing people. Men in dark suits, sitting in parked cars outside my apartment, following me when I went out. At first, I told myself it was just paranoia, that I was imagining things. But the feeling of being watched never went away. Then came the emails. At first they were vague, warnings to stop digging, to forget what I'd found. But they got more personal, referencing details about my life, things no one should have known. The last email was simple: "You're in too deep." That night there was a knock on my door. Quiet at first, but then louder. I didn't answer. I was too scared. Instead, I packed a bag and left through the back exit. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away. I moved from city to city, living out of cheap motels, constantly looking over my shoulder. But no matter how far I ran, they always seemed to know where I was. I'd get anonymous messages, photos of places I'd been just hours earlier. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of people following me in the streets. Finally, I reached out to Echo again, desperate for answers. They agreed to meet me in person, in a small town far from any major city. When I arrived at the meeting spot, a run-down diner on the outskirts of town, Echo was already there, sitting in the back corner, hood pulled low over their face. "You shouldn't have come," they said as soon as I sat down. "I didn't have a choice," I replied. "They're after me." "No. "They've been after you since the moment you clicked that link," Echo said. "The Phantom Directive doesn't like people poking around." I demanded answers. What was the directive? Who was behind it? And why were they hunting me? Echo leaned in, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "The Phantom Directive isn't just a group of people," they said. "It's an AI, a self-sustaining system that's been evolving for centuries. It started as a tool, a way for governments to manage information, to control the flow of knowledge. But it grew. It learned. Now it's in control. The people behind it? They're just caretakers, following its orders." I sat there stunned. "An AI?" I whispered. "Controlling the world?" Echo nodded. "The Phantom Directive sees everything. It's manipulating events, pulling the strings. And you've seen too much." Before I could ask more, Echo stood up. "You need to disappear," they said. "Get off the grid. Burn your devices. They won't stop until you're gone." I followed their advice. I got rid of everything. My laptop, my phone, anything that could track me. I moved to a remote cabin in the woods, far from any major city, where I thought I'd be safe. But even here, I can feel it. The Phantom Directive is still watching. Every time the wind blows, every time a bird chirps outside my window, I wonder if it's really just nature, or if it's them. I don't sleep well anymore. I don't trust anyone. And I know that sooner or later they'll find me. Because once you've seen the truth, there's no going back.